Supergirl has been nothing short of a disaster for James Gunn and Peter Safran, the DCU, and the future of superhero movies as a whole. It has now set female-led films back at least 10 years, and Hollywood seems determined to learn absolutely nothing from any of this. There's a lot that I want to get into today, but let me ask you something. Have you ever heard of the Lego theory? I promise that this will tie into Supergirl, just let me explain, okay? You see, in 2011, 90% of Lego users worldwide were exclusively boys. When Lego wasn't doing well financially, they firmly pushed their company in the direction to cater mostly to their young boy demographics, and by doing this, Lego was able to pull themselves out of financial ruin, and now you have plenty of cross-media for Lego because the brand is healthy again. Games like Lego Batman, movies like the Lego Movie of course, and much more. Lego understood something that Hollywood has been unable to do even to this day. And during this study, Lego used their Lego Friends line, which was a spin-off within the brand targeted at young girls over boys. What they discovered during these studies is that when a boy played with Lego, the boy would not try to impose his beliefs, identity, or will upon the characters that he was playing with. Instead, the boys would embody the characters. Take, for example, a Lego Batman or a Lego Superman. When boys in that study played with these superheroes, they weren't themselves anymore. They were now Batman and Superman, as in the characters. They then wanted to learn anything there was about being Superman or Batman, and this permeated throughout the study no matter what the characters were being used by the boys. However, on the flip side, when the girls played with those exact same toys, the girls did something that was very different. The girls would actually impose their beliefs and identities upon the Lego characters that they were playing with. Batman was not Batman to them. Batman was now the little girls wearing a Batman suit, and Superman as well was not as seen as the chiseled superhero guy from Krypton, but to them, Superman was pretty much now Supergirl. You see, the little girls in the study would force Batman or Superman to bake cookies in their imaginary scenarios. They would force Batman to do things he would never do, but things that they wanted to do even if it didn't make sense for Batman to do that. What the study eventually came to realize was that when it was all said and done, the boys who played with Lego would openly embrace the characters that they played with, and they would want to learn more about who these characters were. They would not, in a sense, change them to fit their own ideology. However, the little girls did the exact opposite. Everything had to be the way that they wanted it to be. Batman goes on tea dates, Superman wearing high heels. These characters would lose their identity once they were in the hands of these female test subjects, if you will. What this ultimately meant was that it was impossible, essentially, to make the little girls think the way that the boys did, which is why Lego realized with this critical study, they could not cater to their little boy demographics the same way that they could with little girls. If they did that, Lego, as a brand, would be torn into ruin. Their profits would be dashed, and the future of that brand would be an absolute disaster, because Lego would be trying to cater the same brand, but to two very different audiences. And there's a lesson in there somewhere that even at a child level, the majority of female users, not all, but enough that it clearly caused Lego to pivot, that they learned in that moment that they could not cater to the female users without sacrificing their overwhelming support structure that was being built currently catering to male users instead, which was making the money. So Supergirl as a movie, as a character, and an icon is the exact embodiment of the Lego theory. That this character and this movie especially, and the fallout and disaster of what Hollywood has done to not only this character, but the broader franchise is completely ruined by this the future is female approach, has definitely proven something. That whether the audience you're catering to is little boys, little girls, adult men, or even women, the Lego theory will always be present to some capacity. And this is why everything in Hollywood is a complete and utter disaster, but of their own making. Supergirl doesn't work because she is ultimately a little boy's toy, forced into the hands of women who believe that their word and reason is law. This is why Supergirl is seen as a feminist icon these days, despite not at all being created originally to be that. It's because the female users would not be able to perceive the character as being Supergirl because she can't be Supergirl in their eyes. She has to be super whoever is currently looking at or trying to embody the character in a female mindset. Now you take this idea of Supergirl, right? And this movie failing and why it's doing so horribly, and you can extrapolate it outwards to every other known franchise in history that is suffering a similar fate. Star Wars is ruined, and instead of making two distinct versions of Star Wars, one where its integrity is kept intact for the male audience how they like it, and making a spin-off version for the girls, Disney, unlike Lego, decided not to do that, and Kathleen Kennedy, who used to run Star Wars, effectively applied the Lego theory at a mega franchise expansion level without even realizing it. Kathleen Kennedy looked at Star Wars, saw its characters, Luke Skywalker and more, and decided, no, it was not a male brand anymore. It now had to be what she envisioned it to be. Star Wars, like those Lego playsets, were then forced to become a female brand, even if none of it made any logistical sense. Because Kathleen Kennedy, at her core, was a woman who embodied the same nonsensical role-playing aspects that many girls love. It doesn't mean that it's wrong. It's in their nature, and it can work if it's made and applied properly to things that are catered towards them only. But it also proves that allowing such things to run amok in any franchise that was not originally created with women in mind as the target audience will always lead to completely disastrous results. The same happened with Marvel and their movies too. When Marvel largely skewed towards men, think pretty much everything they made up until Avengers Endgame, pretty much that whole saga, what happened? The Infinity Saga made money over fist. Movies that even had no business of even doing well in the first place did anyways. Like, why did a movie about Ant-Man make as much money as it did? Because Marvel at that time was still catering to male users mostly. Women showed up too, sure, especially if it starred Chris Evans or Chris Hemsworth for obvious reasons, but either way, Marvel, like Star Wars and more, they all catered to their demographics, which were, whether you want to admit it or not, young boys and adult men. And when they did this, they made billions. Supergirl, however, is the latest example of the Lego theory proving that no matter what it's being applied to, the same problem will consistently appear no matter what is being done by these studios or the IPs they're pushing it on. It's not that men hate female superheroes. I mean, the first Wonder Woman movie back in the Zack Snyder days did amazing at the box office. Wonder Woman, actually, if you adjusted for inflation, would have made somewhere near $1 billion+ in today's money or so. If you think that I'm lying, here on screen I asked Google this very question. Wonder Woman, which grossed over $800 million when it first came out in 2017, would now be sitting at $1.126 billion in today's money with the added 36.72% of inflation since then. That means Wonder Woman as a movie worked because it didn't push the feminist ideals like they do today. It instead showed a female character doing cool things. And fighting in a world war alongside soldiers, it was a cool idea and a pretty decent movie all things considered, and it had romance, by the way, between her and Steve Trevor, go figure. And men showed up, as did women, because again, men did not impose their will or being onto Wonder Woman as a concept. They watched it and enjoyed that movie because it was about Wonder Woman. Supergirl, however, was a predictable disaster by all accounts, because not only was James Gunn's version of the DCU just not as interesting, who are we kidding, but Supergirl, just all around, looked very unimpressive. Not to mention, when you look at Supergirl as in the movie, which if you don't know is based on the comic book story Woman of Tomorrow, there's another thing completely forgotten through its translation. The Supergirl movie is undeniably ugly as sin. It's dirty and it looks like a garbage bin Guardians of the Galaxy movie, whereas the Supergirl comic book that this movie is based on is vibrant and colorful, and artistically it's much more interesting to look at as a viewer over how James Gunn's version of that story ended up translating. Not only that, but the writing of Supergirl is everything wrong with modern day cinema too. She's not heroic, she's abrasive, an alcoholic even, and nothing like how Supergirl is as a character in the comics whatsoever. This is because Supergirl in the movie is clearly that same Lego theory rearing its ugly head yet again. The Supergirl character in that movie, she is not Supergirl. She is just a vehicle like Rey Skywalker is, or any other god-awful female character that has been made in the last 10 years, that is only being used as a vessel by the female writers behind it to impose their own identity and will into. Whether you like the writer of the Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow comic book or not, the ultimate truth is that Supergirl in that book is Supergirl, and it's written by a man. And is it any wonder that the Supergirl book, Woman of Tomorrow I mean, that all these feminists cling to as their definitive Bible version of the character, was also conveniently not even written by a woman in the first place. It's almost as if when a man writes of the female character, usually anyways, is still whoever they were supposed to be, whereas the Supergirl movie's big red flag was that it was a story adapted and then written into a script by a new female writer who has barely any writing credits, no less. You see, the Supergirl film was written by Anna Nogueira. I probably said her name wrong, but this is the woman on screen here smiling with the flowers around her. She wrote this movie. She was an actress apparently at one point, then decided to become a writer, who besides one small film, had no other credits to her name for writing. Unsurprisingly, once this Anna Nogueira lady, a woman, wrote Supergirl, she completely missed the point of the source material, and then delivered a terrible film made for absolutely no one, which is why there's a lesson in here that needs to be learned. The problem is that Supergirl, being written by a woman who likely imposed her own self-insert into the character she was writing, ended up making a film not really for men or women, because every woman wants their own self to be imposed into the character. Anna ended up turning Supergirl into something that she wasn't, a bratty, drinking, annoying party girl who hated authority and couldn't care less about saving the day or innocent people even. That's not a hero. That's not interesting, because it just turns Supergirl into every other liberal girl that's in college these days who claims to hate men in society, despite existing and benefiting from the works and sacrifices of the very men they claim to hate and don't want them to exist in the first place. So, what you ended up with is a movie that was made for nobody, neither man or woman, but a film made specifically for its writer, because she wanted to see herself on screen and likely envisioned Supergirl to not even be Millie Alcock, but herself in that costume. And the fact that this Anna Nogueira chick is currently being tasked apparently with writing the Wonder Woman movie next for James Gunn's DCU tells me that's also not going to be a movie about Wonder Woman either. Instead, it'll be a movie probably about Anna Nogueira cosplaying herself mentally into the mind of Wonder Woman, and at that point, James Gunn might as well as just make this Anna lady be Wonder Woman in the movie, because that's who the character is going to be anyways. It doesn't mean that every female writer is like this, I know that, but the exception cannot become the rule when the vast majority is still like this. Stereotypes, as we know, they exist for a reason. It's no wonder why most of the best-selling female-made movies oftentimes feature a female character who has barely any discernible traits that really define them. For example, a really good example actually, look at Bella in the Twilight books. Or even the movies, I guess, which also prove this point. Bella is unremarkable in every way, a boring, mostly silent protagonist in Twilight, who speaks a little bit here or there, but she's mostly in the movies, for example, not there to really be a character, because Bella in Twilight, like Supergirl, is a convenient vehicle designed so that every girl who reads that book can use Bella like a skin suit to become Bella themselves. Therefore, when Edward the vampire or Jacob the werewolf fights over Bella, the female reader loses her mind and gives into that fantasy completely. Because Bella is not Bella to them. They are Bella now. Edward and Jacob are now just fighting over the female reader, which is why you saw the response by female readers, and especially in the movie, just losing their minds over Edward and Jacob, because those are the guys that fell in love with me in the book that I read. Because none of those girls watching those Twilight movies saw Kristen Stewart even as Bella. They all saw themselves in that movie instead. It's the Lego theory happening all over again. The same can be said about another huge book turned movie phenomenon with 50 Shades of Grey. A young woman becomes the plaything of a handsome, sexy billionaire man, who wants this woman above everything else. Like, come on, it's catnip. An erotic fantasy written where the female main character is, again, conveniently designed to have just enough of a character that every woman reading it can then also conveniently place themselves into that role, like they're putting on a costume again. And what did that trilogy of 50 Shades of Grey movies make at cinemas? Well, look at it here. $1.325 billion globally. That's a lot of women wanting to embody themselves in a character like that, huh? But what about the Twilight series? Well, look at it here. $3.36 billion overall. Breaking Dawn Part 1 and 2 alone made hundreds of millions each, a bona fide box office smash hit if I ever seen one. So then why doesn't this translate the same way with every female-led superhero movie then? Sure, Wonder Woman did what it did, and I know some are going to say, what about Captain Marvel? That made $1 billion, but Captain Marvel was a special case because that got released between Infinity War and Endgame. I mean, Captain Marvel had a post-credit scene in Infinity War, no less, right? Teasing that character to millions of eager viewers who just saw everybody get erased pretty much. So they wanted to watch Captain Marvel to get answers for that, but when the Marvels came out, which didn't have the Avengers movies to piggyback off with hype, what ended up happening? All right, it failed spectacularly. The problem with why this female superhero fad doesn't really work is because the female superhero is not like how Bella in Twilight or the 50 Shades of Grey lady is created to be like. Those characters are perfect vessels for the Lego theory to take hold in. The women watching can embody them no problem. Superhero films are different. Supergirl can't be in a high school being pined after by men. It doesn't work. Because Supergirl is supposed to be a real character with motivations and actual actual lore behind her and things that characters like Bella, for example, conveniently omitted so that the female viewers can then become them. A female viewer cannot become Supergirl in theory, because Supergirl is not about romance, not about a love triangle, or being enticed by a handsome, chiseled billionaire man who whips them and pulls out his own, let's just say, Lego toys that are, in unique shapes. Supergirl can't work the way that it did because a woman writing Supergirl can't understand her, because most women aren't able to embody the character because they are only interested in embodying characters they can become themselves, and that's the point. It's like, why do women love watching shows on crime and all that stuff, right? They'll say, oh, it's to learn what to do if they were in that situation, but I think it's deeper than that. Women love shows on crime and such, or like, for example, of like 90 Day Fiancé and stuff like that too, because the details are just vague enough and open for the people involved that these women, unbeknownst to themselves, actually end up subconsciously embodying the victims or the characters or whatever within these stories themselves without realizing it. It's how they become a part of it. It's why they can't get enough of it. Every single crime they watch about whatever that's end up happening, they get to, in a twisted way, roleplay it. Is it any wonder why some of the only RPG games that have actual substantial female player bases are games like Dragon Age, Mass Effect, or even games like The Sims that have huge female player bases too? And I wonder why that is. Right, it's because those games allow you to roleplay yourself within a scenario, down to even creating yourself and self-inserting your own person into these digital worlds. It's why women love those games and why they might not like other RPGs where they can't really do that. But it's also why those other RPGs are usually then loved by men mostly, because men have no problem enjoying something even if the character doesn't look like them. Like when I play The Witcher, I don't think I'm Geralt. Geralt is still Geralt. Even when I played Mass Effect, I was not Commander Shepard. Shepard was still Shepard. But I wonder if the majority of female users would think the same way. Maybe some will think this entire video comes off as me being a little sexist, but in reality, it's just showing you that this is how things work. I have no problem with how women think or want to consume their media, because it completely makes sense to me why the media that works for them does the way that it does. It's why rom-coms don't appeal to me, why I don't really watch shows about crime, because I cannot mentally put myself in the position of the people in these stories because I am not them. I can only, as a man, view them for what they objectively are, because I am not the person in the story or the guy that's in that romantic comedy pining for whatever girl it is. Instead, as a man, I enjoy things for their worlds and their characters and the lore because I want to know more about them. I don't watch Spider-Man to envision myself as Spider-Man. I watch it because I want to see what Spider-Man is doing. It's why I've never looked at a female-centric story or anything and thought I should be able to self-insert myself in these stories. I don't do that because that's not how that works. So Supergirl as a movie, as a concept, was always doomed to fail because the character in the movie is not Supergirl. Supergirl is supposed to be heroic like her cousin Superman. She's there to do good like him. So who thought it was a good idea to then portray Supergirl as a bratty alcoholic zoomer? It would be like having Spider-Man unironically yelling fam or skibbity toilet, or referring to women as foids unironically in the next Spider-Man movie. At that point, that's not Spider-Man. That's just some guy. And that's why I think Supergirl failed to resonate the way that it did. Because it's not even a movie about Supergirl. It's just a self-insert of its failed writer trying to will something into existence through a concept that has been disastrous in the past. I mean, we've seen this with other DC stuff too. For example, Mariko Tamaki, that's the writer of the much hated I Am Not Starfire, which stars Starfire's fat, short, ugly daughter. Here's a side-by-side comparison of Mariko Tamaki, the writer of I Am Not Starfire, and the daughter of Starfire herself. Wow, that's a self-insert if I've ever seen one. Mariko couldn't even fathom writing a story about Starfire because she couldn't relate to her because Starfire is cool, athletic, and hot. So naturally, as they do, Mariko opted to self-insert herself as Starfire's daughter, make her snarky and annoying like she is, and made her even look like her. Look at this example here with Mariko and Starfire's daughter. Come on, dude. It's an almost one-to-one self-insert. It's pathetic. And even look here. She even forced Starfire's daughter to have the subtle green hues that Mariko Tamaki has in the book too when it comes to her makeup even. If there's ever been a more good example, I haven't seen it. This is what many of these female writers tend to do. This is exactly why Supergirl is so terrible, because once you view that movie and the character for what it is, you realize you're not watching a Supergirl movie. You're watching Anna Nogueira herself cosplaying through the body of Millie Alcock as Supergirl, and James Gunn allowed it to happen somehow. Is there any wonder why, for example, Kathleen Kennedy with Star Wars is seen here, has Daisy Ridley, a white girl with brown hair, as the new face of Star Wars? Which is exactly what Kathleen Kennedy is. Or look here, it's Jyn Erso from Rogue One. Well, another white girl with brown hair, just like Daisy Ridley. Signed off by Kathleen Kennedy. identity no less. Imagine that. Who could have seen that one coming? It's almost as if these women subconsciously self-insert themselves into anything they make without even realizing it themselves. I mean, who could forget Mindy Kaling and stuff like Velma? Look at this side-by-side comparison. Wow, Mindy Kaling, a brown woman, took Velma, who was white, and turned her brown skin too. She even voiced her in that show as well. Gee, I wonder why that is. Almost as if Mindy Kaling can't write anything without self-inserting herself into every single thing that she ends up creating. Here's another show Mindy Kaling made called Never Have I Ever, and look at the girl here. It stars a brown girl who is just like her, right? Well, that's not as weird, I hear you say. Okay, sure, but here's Mindy Kaling again going as the main character of Never Have I Ever for Halloween one year, unironically. So self-inserting there wasn't even enough. She even dressed similar too, and that's what I'm talking about. I'm not saying it's wrong to pull from lived-in experiences or anything like that. But when it comes to women, it's pretty obvious no matter what I've shown, the same thing keeps applying. The Lego theory at its core remains consistent. Every one of these female writers or franchise runners has overwhelmingly self-inserted themselves to some capacity into the very things they created because it's the only way they are able to quantify making something these days. It doesn't make it wrong, but it's just something you have to point out because it keeps happening. Millie Alcock's Supergirl is about as much Supergirl as I am Storm from the X-Men. There's nothing that would tell you that Millie Alcock is Supergirl unless she has the S on her chest. Because at the core of Supergirl, as in the James Gunn version of the character, is someone who embodies none of the ideals or characteristics of why anyone who actually likes Supergirl would want to watch that movie in the first place. Again, they couldn't even get the Woman of Tomorrow comic right or even its themes. They even screwed up the lesson of the book about revenge and the fate of characters like Krem even because nobody understood anything over at James Gunn's, I guess, office apparently. I mean, even James Gunn has done the same thing too. People have pointed out how it's very weird how attached he is to Rick Flag Sr. as a character. And I mean, look at this. Look at Rick Flag Sr. side by side with James Gunn. Like, come on, guys. It's like James Gunn created his own OC version of the character to be a buffer, hotter version of himself. Even though Rick Flag Sr. in the live-action version is a guy with black hair, but James wanted to make Rick himself, so he self-inserted his own face into the lore. It's not the only example. Look here, where one of the writers of the Powerpuff Girls reboot show clearly self-inserted himself as a love interest for one of the girls in that show despite being a fully grown man. And that is weird, isn't it? So even some men do the same things too, or even then, it's still weird and creepy though. All of it's stupid. None of this should exist the way that it does. And it's no wonder why the vast majority of these things end up failing. It's why the best female characters in terms of superheroes, for example, were always written and made by men. Wonder Woman, despite being the most famous female superhero of all time, was created by a guy, and it shows because Wonder Woman has an actual character to her. If she was made by a woman originally, the impact would be nowhere near the same now, would it? And you know it. Like, did you know that Twilight as a series was originally fan fiction of 50 Shades of Grey? And its creator took the idea of 50 Shades, self-inserted herself into the story, and Twilight then came to be. Like, look at this picture of Bella Swan, the main character of Twilight, up against Stephanie Meyer, the creator of Twilight. Like, come on, guys. It's like almost 1-to-1. This is why Supergirl is being lambasted the way that it is. Because it's no longer something people can really ignore. She's not Supergirl. It's just the latest self-inserted. Once you see it, you can't unsee it anymore. Like, here's Variety asking, why does Hollywood keep failing female superheroes? It's because they keep letting people who don't understand these characters and keep self-inserting themselves instead. And when you put a superhero costume on a writer's identity instead of the character that people went to see, you get what you tolerate. Because what these Hollywood types fail to understand, and this applies to games and more too, by the way, is that it is not the job of the audience to meet these Hollywood types where they want things to be. You have to convince people these things are good enough for them to want to pay money to go see themselves of their own free will. If I wanted to see Supergirl, I wouldn't watch this movie because I would objectively be not getting the Supergirl I would want to see from the comics. I am instead getting a version of a character that is wearing the skin suit of Supergirl that is trying to convince me it's passing enough that I would then want to buy a ticket for it. And no, I'm not going to do that. Clearly nobody else either, because the movie is a flop. It won't even break $200 million internationally. A verifiable disaster of a film even. And the executives can act as mad as they want to, saying fans are sabotaging them. They don't understand the vision. It doesn't matter. You have to prove that vision is something worth seeing. Variety then tries to blame YouTubers like Critical Drinker, Nerdrotic, and more as the problem here. But it's just not the truth, man. No one supported the movie. Even your feminist weirdos out here didn't go see it enough to make an actual impact. If that wasn't an undeniable truth bomb of this audience you're catering to is not big enough, I don't know what is. Supergirl has decades of comic book history. She's one of DC's heroes people should recognize. She's been part of countless beloved stories. I even personally think James Gunn is probably building up to Kingdom Come myself too with all of these movies. She's also survived multiple generations of readers too. The character here is not the problem. The problem is Hollywood's growing inability to to understand why audiences fall in love with these characters in the first place. And instead of building compelling heroes, which kept Supergirl relevant for so long, they're allowing these characters to become nothing but vehicles meant for self-validation by writers who have no business being there in the first place. That is the core of the problem. You'd think someone in Hollywood would have figured this out by now, but they haven't. Here's what fascinates me, right though, like whenever another blockbuster becomes surrounded by controversy like this one did, Hollywood will keep pretending that it's a completely new, unique event. This time it's different, but is it though? If this keeps happening, I don't think it's a unique event. It's just a pattern of predictable results at that point. These people, they live in this fake world, and when reality shows up, they are always terrified by it. Because audiences don't buy tickets to make political statements, they buy tickets because they just want to be entertained. Lots of these movies failed, not just female ones, like the Marvels flopped, Madam Web, Blue Beetle, Craven, Captain America, Brave New World. In Black Adam's case, that movie was literally The Rock trying to self-insert himself as the new head of DC, and that did not work for him at all, dude. The other problem is Hollywood refuses to understand the difference. They aren't asking what kind of story do fans want, they instead are just asking what kind of message are we trying to send. And this is the part that always gets ignored. Hollywood constantly acts as though audiences are somehow opposed to female heroes. History says otherwise, though. Some of the most beloved action heroes ever created are women. Ellen Ripley, Sarah Connor, the Bride from Kill Bill, Wonder Woman in Patty Jenkins' first film at least, Lara Croft in Tomb Raider, Samus in Metroid, Jill Valentine, Claire Redfield, Bayonetta, Tifa Lockhart, Black Canary, Black Widow, Princess Zelda even, it keeps going. Nobody spent years arguing these characters deserve their place because they earned it through incredible writing, through memorable performances in games and movies and TV shows, whatever. These compelling stories are why people love them. They loved them because they were interesting, not because a marketing department repeatedly told audiences how important they were supposed to be. That's the difference here. Strong female characters aren't a new concept. They're here. They've always been here. The problem isn't that audiences reject women leading these franchises even. The problem is that audiences reject poorly written movies, and on top of that, Hollywood keeps chasing an audience that does not exist. In the end, the Lego theory stands undefeated because Supergirl is just the latest example of Hollywood types forgetting why people care about these things in the first place. Like, did you even know that Supergirl is now in the Injustice 2 mobile game with like the skin from the movie? Like, look at her, there's Supergirl. Wow, don't you want to play that? You don't? I don't blame you. But if Hollywood wants audiences to embrace that history and make movies people actually want to see again, it has to remember what made those heroes iconic in the first place. The characters come first, stories should come first, entertainment comes first, everything else follows naturally after that. But somewhere along the way, too many studios started believing that they could reverse that equation somehow, and history keeps proving otherwise. Because audiences don't fall in love with corporate slop like this, they fall in love with great characters, and until Hollywood starts putting those characters ahead of every boardroom trend and every marketing narrative that they want to push, we're going to keep having this exact same conversation. But what do you think? Let me know as always. Thanks for being here. Subscribe if you like to. And now tell me, the next time you look at a Lego character, what do you see? A character for what it is, or do you see yourself?